Good evening. My name is Lauren Hillman, and my thesis statement is, parents should not be held responsible for the criminal, independent actions of their minor children with a focus of mass shootings. The tragedies of mass shootings committed by minors has raised the question of whether or not parents share the blame. The moment a minor is named a mass shooter, members of society collectively turn to the parent and assumes the actions of the child are a result of their parenting or lack thereof. This assumption oversimplifies the issue of what causes a minor to carry out such a heinous act. Parents play a role in shaping their child's development, but they cannot be omnipresent like God or control their child's every move. The responsibility of a minor who commits a mass shooting should not lie with the parent or society, but with the minor committing the shooting. Imagine a 15-year-old girl who's used to being protected. One second, she's walking the mall alone for the first time, only a few stores down from her father. The next, everything flips. She thinks she hears a car backfiring, something distant, almost ignorable. Then she sees crowds of people running in every direction, their faces twisted with fear. The sound comes again, louder, sharper, closer. Not a car, not harmless. Gunshots. She sees crowds of people running in every direction, so she follows. Not thinking, not deciding, just moved by the crowd, she follows strangers into an unlocked store, rushing inside, desperate for somewhere to hide. The door shuts behind them, but the noise doesn't stop. The fear doesn't stop. Unknown to her, her father is slowly making his way to her, toward the sound of gunfire, toward danger, toward his daughter. Inside Foot Locker, a store lined with nothing but glass, she moves to the back, still trying to figure out what's happening. Then he's there. Her father arrives breathless, eyes scanning until he finds her. Relief crashes in, but it doesn't last, because the danger isn't gone. After what felt like forever, the glass door bursts open again. A worker from Fatburger stumbles in frantic, holding up a phone with images no one should ever have to see. Proof of what's outside, proof that this is real. After a few more moments of silence, it happens again, but this time, the glass door shatters. A SWAT team storms in fast and loud, with weapons out, their voices shouting commands that cut through the confusion. People stumble, cry, freeze, then obey. What once felt like safety was now replaced with something just as chaotic, just as terrifying. One by one, they're forced out, hands raised, escorted at gunpoint past lifeless bodies on the concrete. They're led to an open grassy area with no cover and no answers, just a pizza place and a gas station across the street. Normal, everyday places, now part of something horrific. This isn't a story. This isn't imagination. This was real. It happened on May 6th, 2023, at Allen Premium Outlets just outside of Dallas, when a gunman in black body armor, strapped with an AR-15, multiple magazines on his chest, and more weapons in his car, opened fire, killing 8 people and injuring 7 more, ranging in age from 3 to 37. That story of survival, when you hear gunshots and know people died a few feet from where you were standing just seconds ago, is my story, and it forms the foundation for this thesis. This thesis contains 3 main arguments. First, there is no consistent law that governs children and mass shootings throughout the United States. Each state has a law to punish parents for criminal acts, none of which would ever envision long-term imprisonment for a parent because of their minor's actions. Second, it is improper to hold parents responsible for the independent actions of their children because children have autonomy. Parents play a role, but so do teachers and mentors, as well as the minor's social class, education level, urbanization, living conditions, and social instability. Third, the psychological development of a child's brain is a factor beyond anyone's control. This includes the development cycle of a child's brain on an emotional, cognitive, and intellectual level, as well as mental issues and mental health, which alter the development cycle of a child's brain. As we begin this discussion, it is important to define a few key terms. A juvenile or minor is anyone under the age of 18. A statute is a law. A mass shooting, however, is far more difficult to define. There is no single, widely accepted definition of a mass shooting. The FBI defines a mass shooting as an incident when a minimum of 3 victims are killed with one firearm during one event and in one or more locations in proximity to one another. While the other tracking agency, the Gun Violence Archives, defines a mass shooting as an incident when a minimum of 4 victims are shot, not including any shooter, and this database does not require any fatalities. Understanding the definition of a mass shooting matters because they occur regularly, and the media might report a shooting as a mass shooting when it is not. For example, August 9th, 2025, a 17-year-old shot 3 people in Times Square in New York City. In the reporting, Reuters said, mass shootings are relatively common in the United States, where guns are widely available. But this was not a mass shooting. These discrepancies make sourcing mass shooting data difficult. In today's society, prosecuting parents for the autonomous acts of their children are becoming more prevalent in cases where the actions of the child result in injury or death to others. A minor obtaining a weapon, taking it to another place, planning to kill someone, and then carrying out their own scheme is their independent decision, and prosecuting anyone else is inappropriate. The morning routine for most school-age kids is to wake up, eat breakfast, pack their lunch and books, make sure they have their homework, kiss their parents goodbye, and then rush out the door. Upon arriving to school, students gather in the commons to catch up on gossip they missed in the 15 hours they were apart, hear the slamming of locker doors, experience the weird smells wafting down the halls from the bathroom, and make weekend plans. Never do students or parents think this will be the last time they ever experience this morning routine. November 30th, 2021 began like it does for everyone at Oxford High School in Oxford, Michigan. November 30th, 2021, 15-year-old Ethan Crumbley could be seen with a backpack, then a minute or two later, he exited the bathroom without a backpack, but with a gun in hand. After this, the morning routine for Oxford High School students changed forever. According to eyewitnesses, 15-year-old Ethan Crumbley then walked the halls, picking and choosing who was going to die. When police arrived to the scene, there were bullet holes everywhere, leaving 4 students dead and 6 others wounded, including a teacher. To prove just how deranged he was, Ethan shot 17-year-old Justin Schilling point blank after telling Justin to get on his knees. Ethan then turned the gun to 14-year-old Hannah St. Julia, shooting her multiple times after she was already on the ground. These were just 2 of his victims. Who knew, just 2 years later, this tragedy would not only put 15-year-old Ethan Crumbley in prison, but also his parents, James and Jennifer Crumbley, for the deadliest school shooting in Michigan history. In the Crumbley case, Ethan's actions put his entire family in jail. It's hard to imagine the independent actions of one person ruining an entire family, especially when the law does not specify or teach that this can be the end result. Louisiana does have laws in place to govern parents and outline parental responsibility, but the laws do not specify that a parent can spend the rest of their life in prison for something their child did. In reality, Louisiana's improper supervision statute, which allows a parent to be held criminally responsible for certain acts of their child, has relatively minor penalties. So a parent looking at Louisiana law to understand possible consequences would never expect they would spend the rest of their life in prison. The statute is quite specific as what qualifies as improper supervision. For example, a parent may be prosecuted for knowingly allowing their minor to associate with someone convicted of a felony, which could be a family member or close friend. Despite these strict guidelines, the law does not authorize severe punishment. The consequences include a fine and up to 90 days in parish jail. This does not mean that a parent cannot be held responsible, even in cases like mass shootings. According to Wilbert Pryor, Deputy District Attorney for Caddo Parish, it is possible, as it relates to juvenile crime, like homicide. Pryor said Caddo DA's office will not shy away from prosecuting the parent if the law enforcement's investigation can prove that the parent is in some way guilty. Society must figure out why they want to blame parents, especially in situations where the parent does not know what the child is doing. The unspoken purpose behind parental responsibility laws is the hope that these laws will act as a deterrent against poor parenting, essentially scaring the parent into paying attention. It is unfair to hold parents responsible for the independent actions of their children because children have autonomy. Children have a widely recognized right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. As recognized, for example, in Article 14 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Children. State parties shall respect the right of the child for freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. It is immoral and unethical to hold parents responsible for the criminal actions of their children because society often imposes expectations on what parents ought to do, but rarely clearly define their actual legal responsibilities. According to Responsible Parents and Parental Responsibilities, the media, the government, and the courts often make general statements about what parents ought to do, but the phrase ought to do is ambiguous, and it is not always clear whether it identifies a legal obligation from which clearly defined legal consequence will flow if it is not met, or simply a statement of good practice, which is not enforceable. Although the mass shootings committed by minors make up only a small percentage of total mass shootings, they have a profound impact, not only on the shooter and victims, but also on the parents. Punishments for minors involved in mass shootings are inconsistent. Of the 16 mass shootings committed by minors, parents were prosecuted in 6 cases, with sentences ranging from 10 to 15 years in prison to unsupervised probation. Parenthood may be one of the most important and joyous events an individual may experience, but from a legal and ethical perspective, it also gives rise to obligations. The issue is, how far does this obligation extend? There are many other issues at play that contribute to a child's actions. The most important predictive factor of delinquent behavior is association with the delinquent peer group. And though parental behavior may be one of the many influences in the life of a delinquent child, determining whether that parental behavior at issue in a particular case actually caused the delinquency would be almost impossible. While parents may be able to control who their child sees at home, they have little to no control over who their child's friends at school are or who they interact with outside the home. Other factors, including mental health, influence the decisions a minor makes. And though a parent may have the greatest insight into a child's mental health, it is not solely their responsibility to identify and manage these issues. There is a need for school employees to get trained to notice such behavior changes in students. They can help provide initial support and guidance. In a school setting, these professionals observe student behavior and watch interactions within their education program. Parents can collaborate with school personnel for a proactive approach to mental health. In turn, this will also help in school violence prevention. While blaming the parent can seem like an easy solution, there are many other factors that contribute to a child's actions. Expanding criminal liability beyond what state law allows is dangerous because it creates uncertainty about how far the liability extends and what crimes might be included. While current outrage focuses on mass shootings, the same logic can be applied to any situation where someone is injured or killed, even without a gun. For example, if a minor obtains alcohol at a school event, drives drunk, and kills someone, prosecuting parents under the same reasoning would be unfair. Expanding liability raises questions of whether schools, administrators, security, or staff could also be held responsible. Ultimately, the responsibility begins and ends with the individual committing the act, and prosecuting anybody else is inappropriate. Now, in society, there are people who disagree. Some people believe parents should be held responsible for the criminal, independent actions of their children, no matter when or where the action occurs. The seeds of responsibility are planted at home, and the actions that follow are often the fruits of that environment. This should extend to all criminal acts, whether it be theft, instigating a fight, or as this paper focuses on, obtaining a weapon and committing a mass shooting. Parents should be held responsible for the criminal acts of their children, not only until age 18, but until age 25. Because scientific evidence shows you do not reach full mental maturity just because you've hit a specific birthday and are considered an adult. Your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, planning, and impulse control, is not fully mature until around age 25. This makes it the longest part of your brain to fully develop. So if society chooses 18 as the random age to say someone is responsible for their own decisions, it ignores scientific evidence and is set too early by at least 7 years. Though a person may show advanced thinking signs by 18, including being able to consider abstract thought, they still lack complete emotional regulation. Parents currently have many rights and decisions when it comes to raising their children. However, society expects parents to raise law-abiding children, and whenever parents fail to maintain this standard, they should be held responsible. Your child, your responsibility. This commonly used phrase raises important questions of fairness. If you have a child, you are responsible for it, and until it reaches the age of majority, you are responsible for everything that child does. But how is this fair? Because it is an obligation instilled when you decide to have a child. Some parents argue they try to take reasonable care to supervise their child. Some parents argue they try to convince their child not to partake in risky activities. While some parents use this as a defense and claim their child's acts were highly unforeseeable and could not have been reasonably anticipated. This was the case of Ethan Crumbley. Ethan's parents, James and Jennifer Crumbley, claimed they did not know the extent of his behavioral issues and never dreamed he would go so far as to killing others. The jury shot this argument down and fired a warning shot to parents everywhere, saying if you have a child, you can and will be held responsible for that child's actions. When it comes to laws holding parents responsible, Oregon's statute is excellent. Oregon's statute states, the elements of the crime are being a parent and having a child who has committed an act of delinquency. Oregon statute also says, if you are a parent, you are responsible for your child's crimes. Research shows that parental control is only one factor in juvenile crime. Other factors, including social class, education level, urbanization, living conditions, social instability, and mental health, also play major roles. Clearly, it is not just the parents who shape a child's behavior. Our Louisiana legislature went so far as to trying to regulate our constitutional right to bear arms. Firearms are already politically contentious issues and proven hard to regulate, so it's easier to incarcerate individuals piecemeal rather than to address the underlying cause. On April 1st, 2025, our Louisiana legislature introduced a legislature designed to create a crime of the unlawful storage of firearms. This was Louisiana House Bill 220, and it died in committee on June 12th, 2025. Had this bill been passed, it would not have been firearm regulation. It would have merely created a lawful way to store firearms and made it a crime to leave a loaded firearm in a dwelling or vehicle when a parent knew or had reason to know that a minor child could access it without permission. This is not firearm regulation. It is regulating juvenile access. Perhaps it died in committee because it's unnecessary. If parents are already held responsible for their children's actions, we do not need a law of this nature. So while blaming parents seems easy, it does not serve justice and will not deter minors from committing these autonomous acts. The responsibility lies first with the minor child and then with our society and parents for failing to provide the resources necessary to prevent these tragedies. Society owes a duty to its citizens to provide resources to help struggling youth. The next tragedy will not be prevented until we shift our focus to these two solutions. Thank you. I would now like to open the floor to the judges for questions.
I'll go first. I'm really proud of you. Good job.
Thank you.
I have two questions, and they kind of coincide. So the first one is, when you look at the child, and we look at, as educators, we're looking at the whole child, and you're looking at child development. You talked about a wide range of age. Like, there's a huge difference between a 14-year-old child and what I can expect of them out of maturity, and high expectations for them is different for high expectations for a 17 or an 18-year-old, right? And so if we're holding them to those expectations, how does that coincide with what you're saying, with they're not responsible, or their parents are not responsible
Yes.
with that? So that's the first. And then if you are holding the parents responsible, should then we also, if we're as a society holding the parent responsible, should we give them proper education themselves of how to detect some mental health issues?
Yeah, so to answer the first question about what age we should hold children responsible, because yes, I agree that your maturity level differs from, first of all, who the kid is, how they're raised, and what age they are. So to go into a little bit more detail, around age 3 to 6, a child starts learning basic skills of learning the English language, learning right from wrong, learning yes, it's wrong to go hurt another person. Around age 8 to 9, they know, hey, this is wrong. It's wrong to kill people. It's wrong to steal. And you should probably look both ways before you cross the street. Just things that a person should know. I think by around age 10, no matter who the child is, where they come from, they know right from wrong. They know not to steal. They know it's a crime to murder someone, and they should be held responsible for their actions around age 10. And then, can you say your second question one more time?
If you are holding the parents responsible after age 10, what you're saying, should society, like, should we require parenting classes, like, to recognize some of these key aspects of mental health, things that are disturbing? You have your educational system that is trained to do that, but how do we support parents in being good parents?
Yeah, I don't really know how we would help a parent become a better parent, because I don't know how those classes would look like, but there definitely should be. So Louisiana's law is not specific enough. I think that we should dive into more detail with our Louisiana law. Like, Oregon's law literally says the elements of the crime are being a parent and having a child who has committed an act of delinquency. In Louisiana, you might go to jail for maybe 90 days, if that, in parish jail, and you might just get a fine. It varies so much that parents are like, oh, it doesn't really matter if I watch my child if I don't.
There's not enough consistency.
Yeah, there's not enough consistency. Any other questions?
Yes. Lots of questions. No. This is such, a topic that I feel like we could just discuss ad nauseum. I'm two questions. I remember when that situation happened with you. I remember how scary that was. I looked back in your paper. You don't mention anything about the perpetrator. How old were they, and what happened to them?
So he died on the scene.
Okay.
He was shot by the police on the scene. I'm not sure how old he was, but he was not a minor.
So the next question I have is, and I'm guessing this differs on a state-by-state basis, yes?
Yes, ma'am. It's
So
very inconsistent.
Do you have any research that shows where parents have been held responsible when the shooter was killed in the situation? Because lots of times in mass shootings, the shooters die on the scene too, whether they take their own life or they're taken out by the police.
In the 6 cases that I've studied where the parents were prosecuted, I'm not 100% positive, but I'm from the ones that I remember, the child was still alive, and he was also put in prison along with his parents.
And how different are the laws if a shooter is tried as a minor? What does the punishment look like or if they're tried as an adult.
So I didn't get much into that in my paper. My paper was more of just a who is to blame, not really that type of situation. But that was a good question. I could get back to you on that.
Do you,
I do have a question about the Ethan Crumbley case. So that was kind of a wild case because Ethan Crumbley, killed classmates, killed a lot of minors, but the behavior of his parents, I think, was alarming because they were on the run for a few days there. I forget how long. Like nobody could find the parents, and I think when that. I don't know how long it took for us to find out, but they had withdrawn some money, I believe. And they are the ones in jail now. I mean, all three of them are in jail.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that the behavior of Ethan Crumbley's parents contributed to them being held responsible after that shooting?
I think specifically in the Ethan Crumbley case, his parents gave Ethan Crumbley the gun, but I do not think they should be held responsible. I don't think that they should be in jail today. They claim in their statement, in their defense statement, they claimed that they did not know the extent of his behavioral issues, and they never dreamed he would go so far as to kill others. And I believe that if you truly had no clue that he was going to commit the act, then you had no reason to know.
And he is the one who did it. I mean,
And
I understand. That's why
it's
it's
the one
such
that
a
pulled the trigger.
it's a double-edged sword. I mean, I get it. They gave him the gun, and there were some, he was in the counselor's office. The parents were there. They said, get him help. And they said, oh, we got to go to work. And he ended up staying, and that's when he shot everyone, or shot the ones who he did. That's just such a complicated case, and I can see, he is the one who pulled the trigger. He is the one being held responsible, but it was a big deal for the parents to go to jail for, I think it's 10 or 15 years. I don't remember. 15 years. Yeah.
I have a ton of questions about the Crumbley case, but I won't ask those at the moment. My bigger question is, I understand from a legal perspective that part of your concern here is precedent. Like, we start blaming parents for the autonomous actions of their kids, there are going to be deeper ramifications that none of us want. Can you explain, can you articulate what some of those ramifications could be if we went down this path further?
What do you mean?
I forget how you worded it in your paper. If we start blaming parents, what's going to be the snowball effect? What's the next thing that's going to happen that we don't want to happen?
And that's kind of what I'm trying to argue, more of a who is to blame, because if we expand liability to parents and say the example I gave, somebody got killed without a gun and it was from drinking alcohol at a school event, expanding liability to parents then expands the liability of, if the parent is held responsible, that action took place at the school should be sued. Then it goes,
or the head of the upper school specifically,
Then it can just keep going down as a snowball effect, and then ultimately then everybody's going to be piecemeal, like I said, incarcerated, just one by one.
Yeah.
There seems to be a difference, though, between a student drinking too much, a young person drinking alcohol and getting behind the car. They don't have the intention that somebody with a gun in their hand has.
Definitely.
So intention is very different in that situation. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree with that.
I guess my question is a clarifying question. You mentioned the Oregon statute you mentioned it because it's, if your thesis is you don't think parents should be held responsible for mass shootings, but the Oregon statute is very strict, saying their parents are responsible for
anything that your child does.
So you think that's what should happen? That kind of clarity is what should happen?
I think that if we are going to hold parents responsible, we need clarity that is what is going to happen.
Okay, that's a good clarification.
Because Louisiana's supervision statute says that they might go to parish jail for like 90 days, maybe get a fine.
It's not clear.
But Oregon statute is you will be held responsible. You know what to expect.
And I guess another question I have is just that are the statutes that specify parents even necessary? Because you tell me, I don't know. You've been reading about this. Could parents potentially be held liable, or just based on existing statutes, like any accomplice or someone who was in a crime would be held responsible.
Yeah, so Wilbert Pryor says that if the law enforcement's investigation can prove that the parent is in some way guilty, then yes, they will be prosecuted.
So-
If they are a part of the crime, yes.
So that could happen regardless of whether or not these specific laws that address parents even exist, correct?
Yes, if the parent is proven to have some sort of affiliation.
Gotcha. Okay, thank
Yes.
you.
Okay, if there are no further questions, thank you.